Okay, issue 4, the cartoon.
The French magazine Charlie Hebdo this week republished a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad. When the cartoon was originally published by the magazine in 2006, it sparked protests across the Islamic world. In January 2015, two Islamist gunmen murdered 12 Charlie Hebdo staff members after raiding their Paris office. The magazine says it is republishing the cartoon to mark the beginning of a trial of 14 people charged with supporting the 2015 attacks. The decision reignites a debate over the question of free expression in a democratic society.
Kerry, I'll start us off here. I think it's absolutely appropriate for a magazine which had its staffers murdered over what they produced to publish these cartoons if they decide it is appropriate and they have their reasoning with the trial. Your thoughts on this, though, and the real debate about where the responsibility of freedom of speech should fall, if anywhere.
You know what's so interesting about this is that even just moments or rather months after the whole horrible massacre uh, over in France of the Charlie Hebdo offices, uh, still you ended up having a number of victim blaming uh, publications going after Charlie Hebdo, saying yes, it's horrible what happened to your staffers, but still you shouldn't have done what you did. You kind of asked for it. Though there was a brief moment of just with Charlie and there was lots of support for Charlie Hebdo, still, 5 years later, the head of Charlie Hebdo still has to walk around with a private detail, and it's very sad. So this is one of those things where now, 5 years later, people can't even walk around wearing, say, a MAGA hat without being attacked in some places here in the United States. Some people can't wear certain other political paraphernalia sometimes without being attacked. And some people will say, well, I'm being triggered, so therefore you can't wear that political signage in some way. The NFL says that there's only certain things that can be put onto helmets as far as political signage is concerned. So have we come a long way as far as freedom of speech is concerned? No, I don't think we have. In fact, I think it's gotten worse.
Clarence, some legitimate points there, and I'm sure there would be members of the left, Antifa, peaceful people perhaps, or I don't know how many peaceful Antifa people there are, but far left protesters who feel they cannot wear what they wish to wear and be peaceful in some conservative areas because they may see the same treatment. Where do you think we are as a country with freedom of speech now, and how do you see the Charlie Hebdo decision to republish the cartoons?
I think we are a country of people who support the First Amendment without reading it. I know so many people who think that the First Amendment means you have free speech to just say or print whatever you want to. Actually, it is a protection from the government restricting your speech or your printed material. You're still responsible, however, to understand that you may still get punched in the nose for wearing a hat that ridicules MAGA or supports it, or say anything with Black Lives Matter. However, I'm on the board of the Committee to Protect Journalists, and this is a big issue with us. We both want Charlie Hebdo and publications like it to be protected, while at the same time, we understand that people do get offended by certain print and certain speech. I personally would not do what Charlie Hebdo is doing with Muhammad, because there's so many people out there who just will respond in all kinds of crazy ways. Don't know what's going to happen. That's not just Muslims I'm talking about either. But the fact is that this is, at the same time, I respect Charlie Hebdo's people for their chutzpah, for their good old French courage and saying, hey, you can't restrict what I want to express, and people do have that kind of right. That's the way you expand freedoms in the long run.
Very good. Pat, your thoughts?
I disagree. Certainly, Charlie Hebdo has a right to do what it's doing. But I think given the fact that you had a massacre there and that 1.5 billion Muslims are in the world, many of them look upon the Prophet as a great salvation of mankind. They're willing to fight for him and die for him all through history. And you engage in deliberate blasphemous insults of him. it seems to me you're asking for retaliation. And we know what they've already done. So what happens now if they do it again? We don't know about that. But about France, in France, if you say there was no Armenian massacre and the Turks, you can get prosecuted. Take the United States of America, Clarence. If people ran cartoons mocking Black people and used the N-word on them and then tried to sell them in certain areas, they could expect, I think, to get punched in the nose. So people have to be aware of just what they're doing and other people's sensitivities and concerns. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Our own First Amendment is absolute, but do you think child pornography is a great thing that ought to be defended and protected?
I'm sure Clarence does not think
Let me
that.
respond to
And,
that. Well, child pornography is child abuse. That's a crime. I don't see that as a question of free speech.
And I think the law, the law is that because child pornography involves physical abuse of its essence, right, it is an adjunct to that. But anyway, let's Eleanor, your thoughts on Charlie Hebdo and free speech.
Well, all the perpetrators of that horrific attack, they're all dead. There are a number of people who are now on trial for being complicit. And, I think I applaud what the editor did. And I think it's been 5 years. He or she knows what they're doing. They know what they're inviting. I think maybe they're thinking that the climate has changed in the last 5 years, that they're not inviting a similar attack. And that is an important point to be made. Where I step aside is where this sense of grievance has been so adopted on the right in this country that anything that is said in opposition to what the right is perpetrating is somehow seen as an attack on their free speech. And I look at the recent reports out of the Homeland Security Department, the senior woman who just left there and is speaking out on television, basically saying that terrorism in this country, which was initially thought to be foreign terrorism and mainly Muslim, the biggest threat is basically domestic terrorism, and 3/4 of it is from the right. And that's been shut down because of political sensitivities in this government. And so, I think there are some things that need to be shut down. And frankly, the notion that you now have the Director of National Intelligence refusing to brief Congress on threats from Russia looks a lot like they want to encourage Russia intervene in this election. And Facebook just recently removed a number of Russian trolls that have been trying to alienate the Black community from Joe Biden. I don't think that speech should be protected. And they're hiring actually young journalists in this country and paying them. So I think sometimes the freedom of speech is stretched too far to cover behavior that is that shouldn't fall under that First Amendment banner.
One of the things that counterterrorism people always say is that the most fortunate element of these people, whether they be neo-Nazis or psychopaths or ISIS, is that they're stupid and they leave little trails, so they get caught. Fortunately, they're stupid. Anyway, Kerry, do you think that, as Eleanor suggests, the decision by the DNI to stop briefing members of the Congress on election interference, at least in oral briefings, do you think that's a really big problem as Democrats present it to be?
Look, you ended up having Ratcliffe, who actually did make this decision to prefer to put this into written briefs, and instead, what he said was, look, we don't want to do these mass briefings for all members of Congress because we were getting leaks, and ultimately he wanted to shut down those leaks, and he would prefer to have these briefings instead with a smaller groups of members, likely with the members of
Gang of Eight.
Gang of Eight, exactly. Yeah. So ultimately, this was a problem he wanted to wipe out. Now, of course, you have Adam Schiff, who is just outraged about this, and he's being accused of being probably a main leak. So I'm not too sure just how effective it may be if he is the leak, but still, one of the arguments of keeping it in a paper brief is that there could be a paper trail if there are leaks coming from a smaller group. So yeah, this has been a very big problem because there has been huge amount of leaks coming from the intelligence community and from Congress during the Russia investigation. So this is something that does need to be dealt with, and I'm not surprised that Ratcliffe made this decision.
Okay.
Point of fact, they were not mass briefings. They were for the Intelligence Committee in the House and the Senate, and now apparently they're just going to do it with the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Okay.
No, Eleanor.
Right.
It was
I'm afraid we're about out of time,
It was
guys.
for all of Congress. It was
Right.
for all members of Congress, actually.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.